Hey, what's going on, guys, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary kings? Cyclid here. And if you're a Berserk fan that spent any amount of time on the internet like I have, then you've likely had a pretty crazy and rough last couple of hours with what's recently just come out about Miura. It's pretty crazy. I can't predict how big the consequences are going to be for the community and the broader reputation of Berserk down the line, but at the very least, the Casca enjoyed it trolls have won big time this time. Now, for those of you who've been living under a rock, aka non-Reddit users, you may not know that 7 hours ago, Free released a pretty controversial and enlightening post about Miura that is likely to send shockwaves across the Berserk community. This changes everything. Let's get into it. In 1996, female Berserk fans of Berserk were pissed at Miura's depiction of Casca's rape. When asked about it, this is what Miura had to say about it. This is from the Berserk Freaks book, and you'll see that it's been removed by the moderators of Berserk, which I'll get to later. But for those of you who don't know, the Berserk Freaks book is this really niche Japanese character manual that no one in the West has ever read. It's out of print, and I think it released in the early 2000s, and look how expensive it is. So yeah, not a lot of people have read this or know about this. So for an English speaker to come in and make claims about things said in this book, it has the potential to be groundbreaking information because it's new. No one's ever read this. The r/Berserk mods, being the cowards that they are, tried to remove this post, so I could not show you what it says, but luckily I had a trick up my sleeve and I saved the photos. This is what was originally written in the Berserk manual booklet, and as you can see, it's a load of Japanese, Nippongo, Nandamo, Kyasu, Kaga, Femto, To, Ni, Sare, Yo. I can't read Japanese, but luckily, this guy, Free, apparently had a Japanese native speaker friend that translated this for him. Now let's see what it says. Now it has to be mentioned that this here isn't actually Miura talking. This is the author talking about their own feelings and thoughts about Casca's rape. So this first section here isn't Miura himself talking, okay? But it was indeed quite an interesting scene. It seems that many people were upset. Personally, I wasn't particularly angry. It seems that quite a few were upset about the scene where Casca is violated by Femto, saying, "This is too much." While being violated by Femto, Casca clearly appears to derive pleasure, and there are even depictions that suggest reaching ecstasy. The angered individuals were mostly women, it seems. In terms of female emotions, they would vehemently express, "There is no way violation feels good, Miura." However, during a discussion at a dinner table, when the topic came up, Miura-sensei mentioned, even without considering the God Hand, "I thought Casca would feel that way if the perpetrator were Griffith." This latter bit is less important now. Truth be told, I hadn't given much deep thought to that scene. Since the eclipse, my thoughts haven't progressed much, and I have more of a reaction like, "Oh my, this character is shameless," going as far as releasing fluids. So the guy who's speaking here is like just as much of a fucking freak. Wow. Miura just gave a quotation in an interview basically proving that Casca enjoyed it. Casca enjoyed being raped by Femto. The trolls were right all along. Here it is, in print. In print. It cannot be debunked now. It cannot be disproven. And this has pretty interesting implications for the fans that like to interpret the depiction of the rape in a way that justifies it, so that they can cope and pretend like it wasn't depicted in a problematic way. Let's look at some of the reactions to this newly found information. You sure this isn't a translation error? Oh boy, here's really hoping there's some lost in translation stuff going on here. Really hope there's some sort of translation error on this one. Disgusting for sure, although enjoyment doesn't mean she liked it. And you can see this everywhere. There's been this mass hysteria and collective cope, which has taken the form of desperately trying to invalidate the translation or the validity of this excerpt. So how accurate is this translation? Well, I've put it through Google Translate, I've put it through G-Show, I've put it through ChatGPT, and I've asked native Japanese speakers on this Japanese language Discord server, and they all reiterate this same translation. OP has stated himself that he has got a native Japanese speaker for his translation. Even the biggest deniers on the thread eventually conceded to this interpretation being completely accurate and correct. Here's another one. So now that we can't call into question the validity of the original source, the question becomes, how can we twist this into a less problematic statement from Miura? And you start to see the narrative shift into one where Miura wasn't talking about Casca's emotional enjoyment of the rape. Instead, he was talking about Casca's physical stimulation, like with her hardened nipples during the scene. And so it's just a biological reaction. How anyone who is assaulted can still feel physical pleasure from it, for lack of a better word, doesn't mean that they enjoy it, obviously. Now what's happening here is that Miura stans are using this argument of justification for the depiction of the rape and putting words into Miura's mouth. And the interesting thing about this situation is that it comes right off the back of Real Life Ryan releasing his video, What Happened to the Berserk Fandom, Long Rant, wherein he engages in apologia for the depiction of the rape. There's this argument that the way Casca was presented as if she enjoyed it isn't actually problematic because in real life, sometimes women experience sexual stimulation that they can't control, and therefore the scene is not problematic. I just said that. It's simply realistic. This is a very common argument you'll hear, and it totally ignores the question as to why Miura would make it that ambiguous in the first place. So the question is this the case? Is this what Miura is referring to? No, it is not. If we look at the prior paragraphs here, it's clear that the setup is the idea that Casca enjoyed the rape, and how a lot of women, female Berserk fans, protest to that. While being violated by Femto, Casca clearly appears to derive pleasure. In terms of female emotions, the women express, there's no way violation feels good. So the setup is the idea that Casca emotionally enjoys the eclipse. And then Miura's words are framed in stark contrast to the women's opinion with the however. And he explains that, even without considering the God Hand, I thought Casca would feel that way, which is ambiguous, if the perpetrator were Griffith, and this is key. Miura is saying that Casca is enjoying it, particularly because it's Griffith that's doing it to her, meaning that there's something unique about Griffith and her relationship to Griffith which is making her feel good, which cannot be about physical stimulation. It has to be an emotional enjoyment if it's in specific reference to it being Griffith who's doing it as opposed to some rando. The physical body reaction would be irrelevant to the identity of the offender. Miura is saying that because Casca looks up to Griffith and loves Griffith, for that reason she is enjoying the rape. And this really starts to make you wonder about Miura's views on women and female victims of sexual assault and rape in general. It's no secret that Japanese culture is highly misogynistic and patriarchal. You only have to look at Japanese pornography to see how deep the poison goes. And the way these words recontextualize the scene is kind of freaky and disgusting. It adds this element of Casca's mind breaking, not because she didn't enjoy being raped, but because she did, and she is so ashamed of that. And that is why she told Guts not to look. It's absolutely horrific. But on the other hand, you have to call into question why we didn't see this coming. The gratuitous, indulgent, many depictions of rape throughout Berserk. The relegation of women to the roles of damsel in distress to be saved by Guts and then be infatuated with him forever. And his problematic views towards lolicon all point towards a man who was not so progressive as initially met the eye. And I think he deserves a cancelling. But what has this done to your perception of Berserk, your enjoyment of the story, and your interpretation of those scenes in the eclipse? Let me know in the comments below. But here's where I get to the last part of my video, and the part that I am the most passionate about, and that something needs to be done about in this community. The fact that this post exposing Miura as a rape apologist and someone with pretty disgusting views of women, the fact that this post was taken down by r/Berserk moderators is so disgusting that honestly I think they should all be ashamed of themselves. You see, the first rule of r/Berserk is be respectful to Berserk, its creator, and each other. This seems pretty innocent at first. It's a rule that makes sense. It's a Berserk sub for Berserk fans, and they don't want haters ruining it for everyone. But this censorship here shows a pretty dark underbelly to the sub, and calls into question the true motives of the mods. You have to ask yourself, in what way does posting the pure, untampered with words of Miura himself onto the sub that paints himself in a bad light disrespectful to the creator? At this point, it's not about respect. It's about defending the reputation of a misogynist pig and try to hide the darker aspects of the story so that no one can know about it. There is no justification for this censorship. Berserk fans deserve to know if the author of a story they love is actually a piece of shit. You can't censor that to maintain this idyllic image of an author while the sheep nod mindlessly and don't know what the fuck is going on. r/Berserk needs a rule change. It is not acceptable to have your post removed for merely posting the words of Miura himself because that paints him in a bad light. Boycott Berserk and subscribe for Griffith Did Nothing Wrong content. Please go watch this video, it's really good. You will change your mind on Griffith. Please watch this other video, it's really good. It will change your mind on Griffith. Please subscribe.